right, man. Let's welcome back.
Hey,
All
welcome
right,
back.
guys.
Happy New
Welcome back,
Year's.
everybody. Happy New Year. I hope everybody had a Merry Christmas, and we hope everybody didn't spend too much money this
Man,
Christmas
come
and go
on,
over
bro.
budget.
Come on, bro.
Yeah.
That's, you might well throw
So,
that out the window. If you'd have
so
seen them
I
like I
guess we
seen
should.
them.
Yeah, we should have said that before the Christmas break on the
Yeah, it's a
last
little
session. We
bit
should have
late.
told them that
Yeah, so if
because
you
we.
did spend a lot of money, give yourself some grace. We understand that this is something that
Yeah,
you're gonna have to
take some
walk out.
adjusting.
Baby steps. That's
Yeah.
why it's called baby steps.
Baby steps. Yeah, exactly. So once again, guys, like we said, welcome back. We are back on track here. We've got a little rest, a little time off for the holidays.
Absolutely.
Enjoyed spending time with family. Did a little traveling. So we're back in the fold and ready to pick up on where we dropped off last time. Where we were, we're here to help you renew your finances, renew the way you look at your finances, and help you get out of that rat race from living paycheck to paycheck. So that's our
Absolutely.
goal, is to share our experience with you guys, as well as share some of the things that's really helped us to get to the point of being 100% debt free, and having the freedom of not owing anybody anything. So without further ado, guys, we're gonna go ahead and start off with our recap. And please make sure you like us on our YouTube channel, as well as subscribe, share it with your friends, so that we can reach as many people as possible, guys. So without further ado, Rondell, let's go ahead and recap it, and then we'll jump into tonight.
Yeah, it's been quite a while since we got together, guys, and understandably, we all took that knee for the holidays. As Adrian stated, we were spending some times with our loved ones, and then also getting out of our day-to-day routine. So before we left, we went over we was talking about some of the top 10 things that people do to get into debt. And one of the things that we discussed in one of our previous sessions, we talked about wants versus needs, and how we kind of get the two misconstrued, because we're not looking at it in specifically from a want and a need perspective. We kind of get those things blended. So during that session, we kind of define what is a want and what is a need. A need is what we consider what a need is taking care of those things that we're responsible for, financially responsible for. The four walls may have you. And then we're talking about those wants. We all have them. We all have wants. I mean, myself included, but nonetheless, we need to stay focused and make sure that those wants don't bleed over to a need, because sometimes it's naturally we get those things confused. I really need this. I really need this car. I really need to get this credit card because of the options that it'll give you, the cash back benefits, or the points that it'll give you if you utilize this credit card, or whatever the case may be. And understandably, the time of the year is kind of what triggered us to go through these things, or how do people get into debt, because we were going into the holiday season. As we discussed during that session, we talked about during the Thanksgiving, and I believe that was around the same time we had that session about wants and needs. We talked about how $9 billion was transpired during a weekend. 9 billion, based upon Black Friday and Cyber Monday. A lot of our American people, or even those who are abroad, had went out and felt compelled to spend that money. Some economists say that as of right now, today, the debt ratio that people have on the debt that they have accumulated on their credit card is quite higher than pre-COVID time frame. And so, and understandably, we want to enjoy the season just like everybody else. But $9 billion is a lot of money to be transferred or transpired during a 3-day or 4-day weekend. And then, let's say we participated in that. Let's just say we went out there and participate into pumping some of our own personal funds into the economy of that $9 billion. What do we tell ourselves, and how does it feel? Because that's the second session that we have. How did we come about to convince ourselves that we needed to contribute to that overall spending that was going on during that period and during the holiday period? Because most people, they'll shop way up to Christmas. I even found it ironically that my own company gave our paychecks early, like a couple of days early before Christmas. And I was like, it hasn't really been a full 2 weeks, which means it's going to be a longer pay period after got paid before Christmas. So that way you and I and everyone else who may have found themselves in the same situation can capitalize off some of those sales in time enough for Christmas, or those sales the day after Christmas. And so what do we tell ourselves, and how does it feel? How do we get to the point where we convince ourselves, where we look at a car and it's $20,000, let's just say for the sake of numbers, we look at that number and we know that number is a huge number. And then we're looking at it like, oh, that's a tall mountain to climb, until you break it down, it's only $350 a month. That's a little bit more palatable to you. So you kind of subliminally and psychologically convince yourself you can take that $350 a month, and then you kind of like put that $20,000 to the back burner or to the back of your mind, knowing that, oh, I can handle this $350 a month. And we told some personal stories about that. How, Adrian had a number of cars at the time, and I had a Corvette. And and I spent money on that Corvette because the payment was this. What do we, ultimately what we tell ourselves, that was the second session before us breaking for the holidays. Now we're going into this third session. Now we kind of held you off because Adrian really was ready to dive into that third session at the end of the second session. We could have rolled right into it because it was very relatable to the second session, but we wanted to hold you off nonetheless, so that when we come back, we can really dive deep into this second topic. And that second topic that we're going to discuss today is that social acceptance. And what people fail to understand or may not believe is that it still exists in this day and age, where we do things financially based upon social acceptance, based upon social status, or based upon privilege, or wanting to have the feeling of being privileged. And so that's what me and Adrian is going to discuss this afternoon, social acceptance. Because I believe that society still has more of a bad habit today than I have had that same habit yesteryear or yesterday. But we're going to chop it up, and we're going to want to get your thoughts on that. So as we discuss this subject, Adrian and I, hey, please put your comments down there below. Let us know what you think about this topic, because I think it's very relevant today. And I believe this is probably one of the premier topics that gets us in certain situations. Adrian.
Okay. So guys, really how we really wanted to relate this was, when did this begin? When did we get to the point that we felt like what society thought of us really tied us into where we are? And as far as how it ties into our debt, so me and Rondell had this discussion, we talk about us, you always hear the term keeping up with the Joneses. You hear that, that we go into debt to keep up with the Joneses.
Never
but really,
met.
how did we get to this point where we're in a competition with other people? And so we started talking about this, and we started, we started kind of peeling back the onion and looking at different scenarios in our lives. And for me, and you guys, make sure you put your comments in the comments down below too of this video. For me, it started in middle school. When I started trying to be accepted by other people. I didn't feel it as much in elementary school, but when I got to middle school, it was about what you had, the kind of shoes you wore, the kind of clothes you had. And, it didn't really, us as a people, we really didn't notice it until other kids started picking on you. They say, he got on, you've been wearing Bobos all through elementary school. And
that's a good word.
Anything about it. Yeah,
Bobos.
So, everybody know who Bobos are. Shaq talked about it in one of his videos. So we never had, like Nikes or all that kind of stuff. We never, it's more prevalent now in elementary school than it was when we were coming up. But for me, that's where I related back to is middle school. They started, they related it how popular you were to what you were. If you had nice clothes or you had nice shoes or your parents pulled up in a nice car, people tend to treat you differently. You tend to be a little more popular based off of what you had, and people kind of treated you differently. So for me, that's when it kind of started, was trying to impress or be accepted by my other peers. So Rondell, what do you think? How do you think that related to you as far as your growing up?
I can only remember one incident where it became a topic for me, or as I was in middle school like yourself, and I'm sitting there in like a horseshoe where the lockers at. Now, mind you, a lot of people, we understand that, there were economic challenges across the board. The main driving force in the hometown that I came for was factory work. And so a lot of people worked in the factories. But those who, did work in the factories, they tend to have a better off lifestyle than those who were not working in factories. They were working other jobs. And, and I grew up in humble beginnings, and we can get into that story at a later date. And by all means, don't get it twisted. I'm not ashamed of the humble beginnings that I grew up. We're talking about social acceptance here. So sitting in the quad, and I see this, this guy come in right after the holidays, just like now. And, those of you who are that's going to be watching this, you probably remember back in the day that there were certain jogging suits that was very famous back in the day, and shoes to go along with it. If you grew up as a, 80s kid, you probably was into, the rap and things of that nature. MTV, I believe, and it was really popular. Yo MTV Raps, a lot of those TV shows that are no longer around. But I never forget this kid coming in to school one day. Brogdon Middle School, he comes down, he had this gray and silver Troop jogging suit on. Now, that was a novelty type jogging suit back then, but it was very popular because of a lot of the rappers, and even one of the R&B groups were named after the jogging suit, Troop. And then I remember the sneakers that he had on. So the jogging suit was, gray and black, and the sneakers were British Knights, and they were kind of black and white, but they correlate with the jogging suit. And as soon as he came around the corner and came into the horseshoe where the locker was, all eyes was on that kid. Now, mind you, there was a little girl that I kind of like, she had long hair, but me, I wasn't dressed like this kid. I didn't start really dressing, and we'll get into that a little later, into my high school years. But at the time, here I am wearing a tight, I'm not going to put the last word on that, sweater and some brown corduroy pants. With some
more the ideal fashion, right?
Yeah, with some black high top Reeboks that were talking, and you know what I mean. Those of you on the channel,
oh yeah,
them jokers was talking.
The Donald Ducks.
And so I'm looking at this little girl now. Mind you, we're getting up in age, so we're in middle school right now. So girls are starting to fill out now, and this dude come around the corner looking the way he was, and they all flocked over there by him. That's when I kind of knew that, I'm not going to be included in that type of circle, because one, at the time, we just couldn't afford those type of clothes that young man was wearing, And so that's when, that social acceptance really hit home for me. And I remember going back home that evening, thinking about it. And it really bothered me for some reason. I really thought about it. But we'll talk how that incident there kind of, catapult me to do other things based upon that incident there. But I'll pass it back over to you, Adrian, because I know we all got stories about situations that are like that.
Oh yeah. All right. So with that being said, now we've experienced this, and we know that, certain things make us more socially acceptable. Having that set in motion for us believing that certain things made you more socially acceptable, because that's what we experienced at a young age. So let's fast forward now to where we're finally able to get out and get a job. Like when I got my first job, my mom did what she could, to buy me things. She did buy me my first pair of Troop shoes when I was in middle school, but I got it for Christmas, and that was about all I got, because those at the time, those shoes, and this was like in the 80s. These shoes ran $100. This was like when these shoes were $100 pair of shoes was like unheard of, back then, but she did get me a pair, and I don't know what it took her to get those. I know we had layaway and all that stuff, but she did get me a pair. And, when I first got it, this goes to show you how socially acceptable I was trying to be, in to my peers at school, is I found out that my mom got the shoes and she had hid them in the attic. And I just so happened to have found them. So my dumb behind, because I can't wait to Christmas to show everybody I got troops, I go up there and get the shoes out of the attic, sneak and take them jokers to school. I'm walking around with the shoes in the box, taking them out of my book bag. Man, look at what I got. I ain't even on my feet. They in the box. And I'm showing people I got troops.
But what compelled you to do that though?
Because of how they made me feel, everybody was, wow, oh, he got these, it made you feel good because people were drawn towards you. It's that popularity, that acceptance that, had I not had these shoes, these people wouldn't be, giving me the time of day, and then other people see them coming up to me or, they're like, hey, did you see the shoes Adrian got? And those endorphins, that feeling, you want to reproduce that all the time. So now, fast forward, first job out the gate. I was working out in the tobacco fields. I'm a country boy from North Carolina. So first job, 14 years old, working in tobacco fields. We made $150 a week, 40 hours a week working in the sun. $150 a week is what we got paid. And this is in the mid 80s. So I'm kind of dating myself now. But the first thing that I did when I got that first paycheck is I went out with the group of guys that I hung around with from my neighborhood, and they went out shopping. I didn't know anything about shopping. I was taking my cue from what they were doing. They go out, they buy them some, new Nikes. They put them on layaway, and they put, you can put a certain amount of money down, and then you pay on it per month until you pay them off and you get them. So these guys was going there buying shoes. And to show you how naive I was, because my mom had always bought all my stuff. So they went in there. I didn't even know what size shoe I wore. So here I am, 14 years old, don't know my shoe size. So these guys go in there and I'm looking at what they doing. I'm watching. They said, they tell the guy, he said, what size you need? They tell him, I need a size 12 or I need a size 11. So I'm sitting there looking. He said, come over to me. What size shoe you need? I need a size 12. I need a size 11. Whatever they said, my shoes was always too big because I didn't know anything about shoe size. Man. So, I'm following on with what I'm seeing these other guys doing. So they buying $100 sneakers, $120 sneakers. So I'm in there buying. Mind you, my whole check for that whole 40-hour week was $150. So I just spent 40 hours in the sun to give $120 to a pair of sneakers. And then the other $30 is all I had left over, from working that entire week, 40 hours in the sun, but that was worth it to me to get that so I could have these pair of shoes, like the other folks. So that kind of started it for me. That's just one story that I can tell you guys. It kind of started it for me. But you told me something real interesting, Rondell, about when you got into high school and the different name brands with Tommy Hilfiger. Like when we were in high school, Tommy Hilfiger, Nautica, all those things were popping. That was when it was your status symbol in high school. So tell me a little bit about your walk with that.
So, I also come from the country. I lived out in Dudley, North Carolina. And so those things were not really, people weren't really, really, really into Nautica and Tommy Hilfiger. But I remember I was living with my mom at the time. I was living with my mom. And so eventually I started going to Eastern Wayne High School. We moved closer to Eastern Wayne High School, or at least in the district where I could start taking a bus to school. And even then, I wasn't really into, I was starting to dip my toe into fashion, and I wasn't at Nautica and Tommy Hilfiger status at that time, because you saw what I was wearing when I first came to Eastern Wayne High School.
Right.
I had an outfit on from, Belle Biv DeVoe days, that same outfit that you see them rocking in Poison, that I probably had a similar light outfit on at the time. And, I get it. You and Angie and all the rest of the knuckleheads in the back of the classroom was clowning me at the time. But then I transitioned and I moved in with my father. So when I moved in with my father lives in the inner city of Goldsboro, fireman of Goldsboro. And so my cousins around me who went to either Goldsboro High School or did not go to Goldsboro High School because they were doing other things really taught me about those products. And one of my cousins was like, "Hey, if you're gonna go out with me, if you're gonna go out with me," because he was known in Goldsboro, and he was known, by girls in Goldsboro. And anytime I was going out with him, that was one of the, we were going to go meet some girls,
Right.
or be around some women, or whatever the case may be. You had to dress a certain way, and the way I was dressing was not applicable to
Right.
his lifestyle and to the people that he hung around. And I remember getting my first Tommy Hilfiger shirt, getting my first pair of Air Maxes, and dressing a certain way because it was presented to me, not even by him, but by some of his associates and friends. It's like, hey man, if you really want to be, if you really want to catch their eye, man, you're gonna have to dress a certain way. Those $2 shirts that you're wearing and those $5 shirts you're wearing is not going to really catch their eye. At this time, the girls that we were coming around were, were somewhat knowledgeable of guys having some type of money. And based upon them having that money was based upon how they dressed. Now, mind you, my relative, my cousin, this dude was always dressed to the nine. Hilfiger, polo, Nautica, shirt and jeans, and then, all the latest fashion and shoes, Timberland and stuff like that. Where I'm coming out here and I'm still wearing,
Mm-hmm. Kmart and Roses,
we moved up to Belk and JC Penney at that time. But it was more or less Limbs fashion or
New York fashions in there.
New York fashions or something like that I was wearing. But these guys were buying their clothes from name brand designers. And so I got my first Tommy Hilfiger. He purchased it for me, purchased my whole outfit to go out that night because he said, yeah, you just can't hang with us looking like that. And that would kind of spark the interest, like, in order to attract a certain group of people, or in this case, a group of girls. And at that time, I had to dress a certain way, and it was costing me some money. And, I wasn't working like I was working as an adult. I was working at the time. I was varnishing pews out there on Highway 70 in Goldsboro, North Carolina, at this, little makeshift factory out there that my grandmother had gotten me a job with. And I mean, I'm smelling like varnish, and I'm painting this varnish on these pews, not only on the top, bottom, and all everywhere, and then going to churches in that area, and then helping installing those pews in those churches. So I worked very hard. So when you get paid, you get paid $150, $200, after 2 weeks of work, that is. And then you go to one of the stores that was in Berkeley Mall. I don't think that store exists anymore. And you drop $100 on a shirt, easy. A Tommy Hilfiger shirt was easy. 50, 56, 60, 75, but depending on the type of style, it could go up to the heights of $100. But that's what I was doing. I was caught in the rat race, because when the excitement and the comments that I got when I first had that first outfit that relative purchased for me, I got caught up in it. I would not wear anything less than what it was going to be, a Nautica, Tommy Hilfiger. Polo was a little bit out of my price range because that was at the top of polo. But man, I mean, in high school, that's how I predominantly dressed in high school because of the notoriety, or the assumption that I had money came from based upon the clothes that I was wearing. Yeah. So that's what I was doing. I was burning it up and going into that store. Maybe weekly, bi-weekly, depends on how I got. Yeah, okay. So that's where it started off for me.
Yeah. Okay. So now we got a foundation for how we do social acceptance, or how we got to that point, or where it started. So now let's fast forward to adulthood. We go to college, and most of us pick colleges, whether we admit it or not. Most of us picked our college based off of how we thought it would be perceived to those around us. We picked, if you went to UNC Chapel Hill, you wore that as a badge. If you went to Duke University, or you went to one of these larger HBCUs, we used these as, because when I went to East Carolina, I didn't even think about the cost of the college. I was more so concerned with the prestige of me going to a certain college, or
Well, at
going
least
to
you
this
were
place.
worried about the prestige. I should never been
Yeah.
in college.
So when we talk about student loans and us racking up debt and these type of things, so we're socially accepted. In all honesty, based off of what the income that me and my family had at the time, I should have went, technically I should have went to like a community college the first 2 years and then transferred to a big college, because
Yeah, I can
without
see
having
that.
to take on those student loans and knowing what I know now and what I've taught my daughters as far as school, I thank God that me and my wife got on board with this thing, several years ago, and my wife got us enrolled in doing the 529 plan. And then, we found Dave. So now we were able to take a lot of the money that we were mismanaging and putting it in its proper place. So now we've able to, put aside enough money to take care of her college because of the adjustments we made, within the last 5 years, and changing the way we managed our finances. But in all
So
honesty,
I
yeah,
mean, for you, that's a great tool, putting money aside. But for me, I really truly believe that not everybody's ready for school, ready for
no,
college.
I agree 100%. Yep.
And I certainly was not. I shouldn't have even wrote. So when we both went to St. Augustine, I mean, actually, looking at the academics, looking at the background, you were ready for school. Obviously, you had better, you had better study and grasping of the academic material than I had. I went for a total other reason.
Right.
Just to say one, I was one of the first ones in my family to go off to college. You know what I mean? Which I should have found myself in there. To be truthfully all honest with you, I should have went in and I had more discipline from a military perspective. I should have went in the military straight out of high school.
Gotcha.
Because I was not mature enough to handle what college had to offer. College was just not, I was not college material at the time. Although I do have a degree now and I have several degrees, I wasn't ready for that responsibility. Therefore, I incurred a debt. Just even going off to St. Augustine for one semester, I incurred debt based upon thinking that I should go to college, thinking that, or having the conversation that I was one of the first people within my dad's side of the family at the time to go off to school. And I should have never went into school. But finish your thought, Adrian. You were saying about
but that's part of what we did. I could have, like I said, I should have probably went to somewhere that we could have actually afforded. But with the whole situation with student loans being available, and this is where we get our first introduction into debt. We got into college, and student loan was my first real debt that I acquired. And then after that came being in college and getting credit cards. And this all started, because now I'm a college student, so they target you for credit cards. Get your credit. You can get a $500 credit card. We talked about this a little bit in our last session about having that credit card and what that meant. But from a social acceptance standpoint, now you're telling me that I have $500. I'm a college student. I have no job. At this point, I didn't have a job because that was my first semester. I mean, my later years, I did get a job. But I have a $500 credit card. I have no money, other than the leftover financial aid money that that we got back, because we always got more money than what we needed. And in hindsight, we should have, we took that money as ball out city. We got an extra $1,500 left over from that semester. Oh, it was on and popping then. We went shopping, we bought clothes, we bought stuff. We paid off. Well, we ain't really paid off.
I ain't paid off
jack. Cards we had, we paid it down so we weren't maxed out. We paid it down and then ran it back up.
Yeah, so, I ain't paid off jack. I just didn't touch it. I just blew the money. I'm just gonna be 100 with you.
So, but what did we do with that money? We were buying things and doing things to impress other people. All through college, we bought those clothes like we talked about earlier because we knew how it made us feel in middle school. If I have this, then people will treat me a certain way.
So I took my 1,500, went to Crabtree Valley Mall. I'm gonna tell you that right now.
Yeah, we went shopping. We bought shoes, we bought clothes, we bought stuff to impress other people. That's it. If and I came to the realization that if nobody else could see you in this item or this article of clothes or this car that you bought, would you still buy it? If all they saw was if you went out and bought this Mercedes, and anytime anybody saw you, all they saw was a Honda Accord, would you still buy that Mercedes? Ask yourself that question.
Well,
You know,
so look at being our mindsets at that time. Yeah, you would have
yeah,
bought that
yeah,
Mercedes at the time.
yeah.
I mean,
But
because we were
why did we buy it? Why did
because
we
we
buy
I
it?
mean, you know, let's be 100. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Although we wanted to be accepted, you know, by whoever we're around, or
Mm-hmm.
you know, feel accepted by whoever we want to be around, or have a certain social status by the things that we were driving. Because you had a Volkswagen Jetta, then you
I had a
transform
Volkswagen
out of,
Jetta
then you went from a Volkswagen Jetta to a
to a
Honda
Honda Civic.
Civic. You know, I
But
had a Mazda RX-7. Well, first I was driving my dad's Cadillac, but
now,
then I had a Mazda RX-7. You know, all those things really came about that, you know, at first we could probably, I'm just being 100. We could lie to ourselves and say, hey, we want to be socially accepted. But after a while, we kind of made those things became behaviors in us also.
oh
You
yeah,
know,
they definitely became behaviors. Yeah, because what did I do to that Honda Civic? That I didn't leave that Joker factory. You know, I'm working at Bojangles. You know, I'm working at Bojangles, going to school full time, working at Bojangles, part time, full time, somewhere in between there. And you know, my mom got me that car. My mom co-signed for me to get that car. Didn't
right.
have the money to get that car. I remember that brand new. No, it wasn't even brand new. It was like a 1993 Honda EX. It was an EX 2-door coupe, red.
Yeah.
And my mom helped me co-sign for me to get that car, and payments were $207 a month. And first thing I did, my Bojangles check, I went out because I had a credit score at the time. Did not have the money. I went out, financed me some rims. Went out, bought some rims for that car. And you know, and at this time, the dealerships were starting to gold plate, put the gold plated emblems on the cars. What did
Yeah.
I do? I found a shop that does gold plating, had them to gold plate all the emblems on this Honda Civic. So here I am, double A on the license plate, on the front of the customized license plate, double A. I wanted everybody to know that was my car. I did all
Yeah.
this stuff because I enjoyed the feeling of people seeing me in that car, and the way people talked about that car. Oh,
Yeah. I mean,
that's a pretty car.
yeah, it was a
You know,
pretty car. I never forget when
yeah,
you pulled up in Dad yard with that car. And
yeah.
you know, and then, you know, the adventures that we had in it. But you
That's
know,
silly.
we'll talk about that another time. We ain't gonna divulge all
Yeah.
that up in this
Right,
channel, but
right.
um it just goes to show you that when it comes down to social acceptance, you know, socially there was triggers, there was factors that played on why we did X or why we did Y or why we did Z. Then we became the X, and then we became the Y, we became the Z, because now it's almost like it is I have to do it. You know,
Yeah,
I've been doing it
yeah.
this long, it's muscle memory
It's
now.
second nature. It's second nature. Like I
Absolutely.
up until the last 3 or 4 years, I've never looked at going to buy a car and paying for it. I've always had financing. Like when I was getting ready to go buy my next car, I said, when I get my next car, I had never thought about having the money to go buy the car and pay for it.
Right.
Financing has always been a part of my life, starting back to when I first, got involved with financing, and, starting out with student loans, starting out with credit cards. That involved being able to qualify for car loans. And this is the way that society has kind of steered us into that direction, is to make us reliant on credit and our ability to want to have stuff right now. Like when we said we were growing up, it was layaway. That means
Yeah.
you had to put it on layaway. If you didn't have the money, you had to put the money down on it, and then you had to make payments. And then when you finally made that last payment, you got it.
So
You
this is
know.
where I would have to disagree with you about society. So
Mm-hmm.
100%, you know, society does a lot of things. You know, society do a lot of things that makes it look attractive, and we don't do all those things. This is where
Mm-hmm.
I believe that there's something in us, that makes us want to do the things that we do. I give credit that society can be a great influential type thing, but then at some point in time, you know, it's no longer society. It's all you. It's 100% you that want to, for at least for me anyway. And what I mean by that is that, okay, I've done the things that we're talking about. I bought the clothes, this, that, and the other. By the time I got into the military, it wasn't society that told me that I needed a brand new car or any enticement for society. That was something in me that wanted the brand, that now I want a brand new, I want this car and I'm going to go finance this car, you know, and, you know, because I was used to riding around in certain vehicles at this time. Now being, being around certain people in the military, now I'm and riding around in their vehicles. Now I want to ride around in the vehicle, you know. And it's only because Rondell wanted to get the vehicle, because when I first went in the military, I had that old Ragley RX-7. They were missing a gas cap. And I want to say, I mean, not gas cap, it was missing the gas door. And it had, it had been in an accident. So the back end was smushed in. And I remember when you start that car up, man, that mud would blow so much white smoke, so I knew I had a leaky, there was some oil leaking somewhere. It would blow so much white smoke, man, it would smoke up the whole parking lot. But it's still at the time, I could have continued to drive that car because the car was functioning fine. But then all of a sudden I went past that dealership and I saw that 240SX and I'm like, you know what? I want that 240SX. And I slung right in there, did a full U-turn down one of those highways at my first duty station and slung right in there and negotiate getting that 240SX. I mean, I'm not gonna say that society doesn't play its role, but at some point in time, I think we have to get beyond that. We want to blame it on X for the reason why I'm doing Y.
Oh, yeah, I agree with you 100%. I wasn't saying that from the standpoint of we learn by what we see others do around us in most cases.
Yeah,
so
I agree with that.
We didn't just wake up one day and figure out debt was available to us. We saw other people getting debt, and you ask people, well, how did you get that car? Man, you can go down there and no money down, man. They'll give you this for $250 a month. What? I can get that for $250 a month. We get introduced to credit cards. We get introduced to debt, 0%. I didn't know what 0% financing was until I was working in furniture, and we offered that to customers. So I didn't even know that was a thing,
Yeah, I mean, I can see how, debt never been a type of thing that make me want to, you know what, all my friends in debt, and I want to be in debt too, so I can be in the same. But the things they have, the things that they have and the things that they acquire.
That's the byproduct of acquiring those things.
Yeah. So in order to acquire those same things, I would say, I would have to go in debt to acquire those things.
Exactly.
But debt alone is, debt alone was and that's kind of ironic. Over the years, I've come to realize, even during the times where we're in high school and in college, sometimes what we see, just because we see it, we don't know the full story behind it.
Exactly. Which is adulthood now.
Because we've gone to high school with kids. Like, I remember one kid in high school who had a Mazda Millennium. Now, that was a $high car back in that time. I knew two other kids had Mercedes Benzes. One was a long 4-door, I guess it was an S500, and the other one, I forget the name, what type of model, but it was a nice car, very decked out. And then, but we never knew, because what happens is that when we're in those states, and most of us that's on this channel, not myself included though, but if you do, people put it in the comments below. We have kids, and as a child at that time, we tend to just look out the windows of our eyes and see what we see, not knowing the full story of what we're looking at, and then start to desire or be involved. Because if you're around a group of guys and they all wearing, let's say, British Knights at this time, and or polo shirts,
Nikes, or Jordans.
Jordans. You don't know what the mother and father are doing in order to dress their kids in those type of clothes, or you don't even know what those kids was doing to be dressed in those type of clothes, especially in high school, at that time. Because where I grew up at, a lot of guys who were wearing those type of clothes were out there doing illegal things to wear clothes of that type. Not all of them. I'm not going to say all of them was, but the majority of the ones that I've hung around were doing those type of things in order to wear the type of clothes that they were wearing. And there lies in, why was they doing it? I've had friends that dropped out of high school and had relatives who dropped out of high school and decided to do X, which is not legal, just so that they can be involved or be included in certain circles.
Right. They want to impress people. Yeah. And that's the only way you can do it is you got to have the capital to do it.
Yeah. And then, from a standpoint, I know some guys that say, I'm going to do this because I've lived like X my whole entire life. And I'm seeing these guys out here or these gals out here doing X. And I don't want to live like this no more. And you know what? I want to be over here. I want to be involved in this, and we're going to do X. Now, that's probably on the grand scale of things. Let's take it back home, how our decisions make us, get into what we were discussing is that debt,
Right.
Because I really believe that when it comes down to what we're talking about, we've all had our catalysts, but the decision is left to the person. That's me personally. At the end of the day, we have to be true to ourselves about some of the decision that we made. We can't continue to, turn a blind eye to that we sometimes make decisions that are probably not the best decisions to be made.
Right.
Even though we're in those circles, because right now we're in a lot of circles today.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because like I said, like we talked about this over the weekend when we was doing our planning session. At one point, me and my wife, and just two of us driving, I had 6 cars in the driveway. 6. And I thought, I had coworkers that always commented on that. Why do you guys have 6 cars? Because I can.
Well, no, that's a good thing. But
yeah,
why did you though? Like, why did you have 6 cars?
They were like, I agree with them now. I didn't see it then, but it didn't make sense for us to have 6 cars. My daughter wasn't driving yet. But the way that I made it make sense in my mind was I had one car, which was my commuter car, my Nissan Versa. And mind you, none of the cars I had were over 2000. The newest car we had in the driveway at the time was a 2010. So it's not like we were out buying new cars. All the cars we had were older cars.
Okay.
So it's not like we was out going spending $40,000 car. I've never spent over $25,000 for a car.
Yeah, but you had 6 of them though.
But we had 6 of them. Nonetheless, we had 6 of them, and 3 of them had car payments on them. So there you go. So let's look at this. I was out. I don't know what it was. I was in this car phase, but anyway, the way I rationalized it, we had a SUV, which we did for like family outings. We had a Acura MDX 2007, and that was for family outings. Okay, that's the car we take when we take family trips. So that was my truck. If I need to go pick up stuff, that's what that was for. All right, it used to be my wife's car, but we bought her another car. All right, I had my Nissan Versa, which I drove back and forth to work. I drove to Quantico over 50 miles one way, so that was my commuter car. Felt like I didn't want to have a nice car and then drive that, back and forth to work, putting miles on. Okay, so that's 2 of the cars. Then my wife drove, about 35, 40 miles, one way to go to work. She worked on the south side of Richmond. So we got her out of the SUV because we figured a smaller car would be more cost effective. She paid less gas. Mind you, we replaced her car with the MDX with a Mercedes C-Class.
So time out.
Premium gas.
How in the world you could that don't even make sense. How in the world you would say, I'm gonna get you out of this? All right, I'm gonna get you out of this SUV and put you in this small, compact, luxury C-Class car that drives nothing but premium.
Premium, yeah.
How?
But get this. Originally, when I first found that car, because I had a habit of looking. A friend of mine had got me on to finding nice quality cars that had low mileage on them. So that's the thing. I had ongoing searches and all this kind of stuff. So when I found these good deals on cars, it had low mileage, well maintained, all the maintenance done at the dealerships. I would go look at them and see. And at the time we got that car, that actually, if I'm being 100% honest, I was going to buy that C300 for me. I was going to replace the Versa with that one, and that was going to be my commuter car. You
Hey,
know,
everybody,
I
to
mean,
be another 100. I saw that car in Germany online myself, and I was going to buy that car before I came back to the States. So I'm just
yeah.
trying to keep it
So
100. But go
yeah,
ahead with your
found it
story,
in
man.
Fredericksburg. But yeah. But and then I asked, and Shonda was like, do you really need another car? And I was like, yeah, you're right, I don't need it. But I know she needed a car. So I said, well, what do you think about getting a car? She said, I like it. So we ended up buying the car. The car was only $13,000. But did I have $13,000 to go buy the car cash? No. I hadn't even never thought about going and buying the car cash. We financed it just like we did everything else. So here we are now with that car, and I'd already bought myself a luxury car, so to speak. I had a Mercedes-Benz S-Class that I bought. So now we got 4 cars in the driveway, and my crazy behind still looking at got these ongoing searches going on. Then this E-Class come about, 2010 E-Class with 16,000 miles on it. This is 2016, mind you. It's like, that's interesting. And it shows up at the dealership right on my way out to go home. They had a Toyota dealership. Mind you, this be the second Mercedes I bought from this Toyota dealership. I bought my S-Class from there, and I bought this one from there. So here we are, 6 cars. Now it starts to make sense to me why everybody's saying, why did you? I went for about, let's see, I got that car in October, and I think I sold my S300 that January. So I only had 6 cars for a total of about 4 months, because I knew I didn't need the other car because I wasn't going to driving it. And, and it was just sitting. So I ended up selling it. I sold that car in January. So I did only have, we were down to 5 cars at that point, so, but yeah, we had all those cars and those car payments, and there was no need for it. I couldn't even tell you why I had all those cars now, other than, me. I have no idea why I had those cars. I really asked myself, I wasn't trying to impress anybody that I can think of when I asked myself, why did I have all those cars? I did like the E-Class because I didn't like the S-Class as much because it was so big. It's not really a little sporty car that you can kind of drive. I wasn't really driving it that much, and but I did buy it because it was an S-Class. I thought it was a nice car. I thought it was a good deal, and I bought the S-Class. But yeah,
So
I did not need all those cars.
So one of the topics up here in the article that I read that we kind of talking towards in this subject, which is social acceptance, it talked about privilege. Just because we can, should we?
That's right. And that's what I've learned. That's what I've learned these last 5 years. Just because I can afford the payments and to go out and get it and it not hurt me, from being able to do some of the other things I got, that doesn't mean that's the right decision to do it. Like I was mismanaging. I come to find out over the last 3 years, I mismanaged a lot of money, a lot of money, buying things and getting stuff just to have it. I mean, like I said, I wasn't so much trying to impress people, but I was buying stuff just to be buying. Really,
so that goes back to what I was saying is that now that you don't have that, let's just say you don't have that influence of being accepted or socially accepted by a certain crowd or anything like that.
Yeah.
But now there is something in you that are making the same decision that if there was a crowd that was, you were probably involved in or with to say that get it, because that's what happened to me. What you're talking about is very relevant. You've been doing things the way it's been done for a whole long time. And like I had expressed to some family members over the holidays, when I was telling you about I rented that Tesla. Now, most people are like, why do you rent a Tesla? Okay, guys, I'm not an advocate. I'm not getting paid by Turo, but I will recommend that if you want to rent a nice car that you've never driven before, try the Turo app because it gave me the ability to drive a Tesla. Although that was stressful, without a shadow of a doubt, driving that car. But yeah. I found that when I pulled up, because most people say, well, why didn't you just rent this versus that? Well, because I was really considering buying a Tesla at one point in time based on gas prices. So, but not knowing how they drive and how to operate them, this was the best and safe way of me getting that experience without owning it. Nonetheless, the conversation was 100% different when I got to my family's house in Florida. When I pulled up in that Tesla, the conversation was more revolved around that car and how that car is. And then somehow
Mhm.
or another, we got talking about the other cars that I had owned in my time.
Mhm.
I've owned a Nissan Altima that I got trashed. And then I turned around and owned a Chevy Avalanche that, at the time when their vehicles came out, they were horrible for blind spots because I backed right up into somebody with that vehicle because of the inability to see all the way around that vehicle. Get rid
Mhm.
of that vehicle, get a two-door Tahoe, I mean, not a two-door Tahoe, but get a Tahoe from that vehicle. Go from a Tahoe to, I had my Toyota Camry, but again, there were some things going on. I almost got a Cadillac CTS because
I remember that.
I didn't feel, as confident that I was driving the
Right.
Toyota Camry, which was an old Camry, versus having a Cadillac CTS, but God quickened my spirit on that, so I didn't get that. But then we got on the subject of talking about the Corvette. And I had to tell them because they were talking about how nice it was. And I remember I visited my mom in it at one time, which back in Florida, before going to my next assignment. And I had to tell them straight up because you could really get gassed up even by your family members about what you've done or what you're doing. And they were
Right.
commenting on the car. And I said, you know what, guys, that car was such a bad buy. And when I
Mhm.
mean it was a bad buy, it was a bad investment, because at the end of the day, you know, I spent 34.5 for that car, had that car about 2 years at a whopping rate of 534 a month. That's just the payment,
Mhm.
not including the operating expenses that go along with
And
that vehicle.
insurance. Yep.
And and those are the operating expenses, insurance, gas in
Yeah.
that car. Because like a lot of cars, Corvettes only take high octane. Can't put no
Right.
less than 93. You can put 91 in there, but you can rarely find 91 in.
Right. Right.
But it was just such a bad buy, only to get $5,000 out of that car. So I got 1/4 of 2 years of payments out of that car. You know,
Mhm.
but I did walk away with no. I wasn't upside down because of the model vehicle it was, but nonetheless, it was such a bad buy. Because think what I could do with 34.5. Let's just say I had 34.5. What could I
Right.
have done with 34.5 if I would have took the 34.5 and have the mindset, or even try to find out or seek out the knowledge to do something with the 34.5 at that
Right.
particular time.
Right.
34.5 was almost 7 years ago, maybe 8 years ago at this point in time. 34.5 now, had I done it and put it in, a nice annuity or investment, would be worth more than 34.5 today. But
Right.
that's where I was sucked in that proverbial. I allow myself to be back into that cycle of wanting something that I didn't necessarily need because those who were around me had those things that I wanted, you know,
Mhm.
and that's what it
Right.
is. But
Right.
guys, this is not going to be a short story. We're going to continue to, hammer this topic home because this is what a lot of you think it was bad for us.
Right.
Wait till we come back and talk about what our people or our kids are going through today with this same topic. Social acceptance was probably on a smaller scale when we were coming through. What's the
Right.
worst thing we have, Adrian? Word of mouth or what somebody got? Word of mouth?
Right. 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 Yeah. Social media has really blown this thing out of proportion, man. So, I mean, you can look at what people are doing from anywhere around the world now, and people are very happy to show you, what they have and how well things are on social media, how things are going on social media. But
Yeah.
a lot of times we don't see what's going on behind the scenes because everybody looking at me and my wife saw everything was going on. I mean, be it we did not have any problem meeting our bills. We didn't have to borrow money from anybody else. Albeit we were borrowing money from the banks, to finance these cars, to do these other things, to get home improvements. But we didn't have to go to family members and borrow money because we couldn't make our bills. So to us, that meant we were doing well financially, or we were doing okay. It
Mhm.
wasn't really mismanaging much. But come to find out, once we really started peeling the onion back, and we found out that 78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. This is coming straight from the financial literacy site.
Yeah, I was one of those.
Yeah, CFI. And I'm like, wait a minute. So if 78% of people in America are living paycheck to paycheck, which means that if something happened to me and I lost my job or Deshaunda lost her job, it would just be a matter of month, probably less than a month before we will be behind on those bills. That means that by the time my next paycheck comes, that money was already allocated to go out towards debt payments that I already had out there. So yeah. So and so that just tells us, man, the average car payment, I looked this up today to get the most current one. For a new car now, the average car payment is $700 a month. For a used car, the average car payment is $556 a month. That's the
I believe
average.
it. In this day and age, that's accurate. But this is what we have, people. You can't see it now; it's blurry because I got my background blurred. But this is what is keeping us from being able to, separate our thoughts from what we should be doing versus what we do. This thing here, we spend a massive amount of time. If you got an iPhone or even a Samsung Galaxy, most people I know, they're Android users. Your phone tells you how many hours that you spend on it a day. And I guarantee you that we don't spend as many hours on the day utilizing it for talking purposes or whatever the case may
or
be.
education.
Or educational purposes, even though it has that capability, because this is the most powerful computer that you're going to have in your hand at any given time. I guarantee you that most of the time, if not yourself, but people that's in your family, like your kids or whatever, are spending time on there being influenced by this very same topic that we're talking about. So when we come back, we're going to discuss this little thing here, how this little thing at your fingertips, because it had gotten me in trouble many a times. That's at your fingertips. Although it's small in stature, it is very powerful, and that it can possibly get you into, or possibly can help you, depending on how you use it. In regards to, eliminating some of these social pressures that you put on yourself, in regards to what you believe you have and what others have, and how you believe you need to have some of those same things in your life, versus utilizing it in a more constructive manner, in a more constructive way, to help you gain that financial freedom, or at least unbound you from having that social pressure to believe that if others are obtaining certain things, that you feel the need to obtain those same things.
Yeah. So in closing, guys, we're going to close out this session, but we have so much more to talk to you guys about. One thing is that we want to get across, is what we're trying to get across to everybody is, we want you to understand about becoming financially literate, understanding what it is to be financially literate, and understand about living below your means, understand what budgeting is, understanding about the different aspects of your financial future. That includes not just money. It includes, making sure you have the proper insurance. Me and Rondell talked about this the other day. We have a lot of people our age, and both me and Rondell are in our 40s, later 40s. But we have a lot of people our age and younger that are passing away, and they've got wives, they've got kids, and they've got, all these responsibilities. And I was in the same boat. My dad passed away at 47. And when my dad passed away, he passed away with debt that fell not only to his wife, which shortly passed away shortly thereafter. And within 2 years, she passed away, for health reasons. And then the debt that he had was still on her, and then that fell to his kids. So anything they inherited from him, or we inherited from him, came with debt associated with it. There was no life insurance in place because, hey, he was 47. He did not, he expected to get up and go to work the next morning like he always does. And, with that being said, we want to make sure that you guys have a clear financial picture about what's going on, so that, if you have an untimely death that's not expected, that your family is not scrambling, that people don't have to set up a GoFundMe page for you, or, or your kids have to figure out, what happens to our house now? Daddy's gone or mama's gone. These are things that we want you guys to be prepared for, and things that we have to take into consideration when we're talking about risk and taking on all this debt. Our days are not promised to us. We don't know when our time will come, but what we can do, and what God has shown us, is we can prepare and have ourselves in a good position, and use that wisdom and knowledge that we learned from him to prepare ourselves for whatever may come. So with that being said, guys, we're going to pick this topic back up next week. We'll be back with our live session next week. This one has been pre-recorded because I've got an obligation on Monday that I owe to my daughter that I want to make sure I'm there for her game in person. So I try not to miss any of her games. So I'm going to be there live for her game, but we'll pick this thing back up. But please leave your comments in the bottom of the video there. Let us know what you think, and if any of this stuff relates to you, let us know. If you remember when this whole social acceptance came and how that's affected you when it comes to debt,
Yes.
or if it even affects you when it comes to debt. For me, it affected me greatly when it came to going into debt. That social acceptance and wanting to have the same nice things that other people had, and that feeling it gave me when people came up to me and said, "Hey, that's a nice car you have," or "Those are nice shoes you have," or how people look and perceive you. But I've learned that, that's all neither here nor there. Now we're trying to impress people that could care less what we got. We're still trying to get that same feeling we got in high school and college, and people could care less what car you're driving. These people are more worried about how they're going to make their ends meet in their house than they do caring about, what you're driving. And if they do, then that's you need to find another circle of friends that's not as shallow, to be worried about what you drive, or what you living in, or what clothes you got on. But anyway, with that being said, guys, we thank you for joining us again for another session. And we look forward to seeing you next week. And like I said, please leave those comments in the bottom. Please like and subscribe to the video, and we'll see you next week.
Yes.
All right.